That sounds great. Why don't you just very quickly before you get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about, am I saying it right? Applatools?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you advocate as a senior developer advocator?
Yeah. So Applitools is a startup and it focuses on visual testing. So when we are doing UI automation or mobile automation, for example, you automate and all the tools are basically looking at the DOM, looking under the covers to verify your application. But a whole bunch of things could be wrong on the screen actually, right? Especially when you're talking about different viewport sizes, things start getting out of whack and bleeding off the edge, and buttons are covering other things, and text might be the same color as the background. So this gives another tool that allows you to check your application from the UI, the surface level of just how your users would see it, and make sure that it's pixel perfect.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. All right, with sort of our thank yous and thanks to our sponsors out of the way, Angie, please take it away. The floor is yours.
All righty. Okay. So, hi again, Angie. I love Java, as I guess you can imagine. I teach free courses at Test Automation University, where I'm the director there. So, those courses include things like Java programming. So, if you know anyone who is interested in learning the language, send them my way. It's a free Java course. It's gotten rave reviews. Core Java. So really, really good. Also teach other courses on there also in Java, like the visual testing that I just talked about, Selenium WebDriver, and then there's a whole bunch of other instructors as well. So check that out, testautomationu.com. All
Angie,
right.
Real quick,
Yeah.
your course. I run the Spring LinkedIn user, Spring LinkedIn group on user group on LinkedIn. I see a lot of students and people learning Java joining. Maybe if you get a second, post a link to your course there, and I can amplify to the group, because I do see a lot of novice Java programmers joining this.
Oh yeah, send them my way. Send them my way.
Cool.
I break it all the way down.
I'll send you a link. Sorry to interrupt you. Please continue. Sorry.
All right. Okay, so while Java is still the leading programming language, it's gotten a bad rep over the years. Some of the biggest gripes that I've heard are things like Java is too verbose, meaning we have to write a lot of code to do the most basic things, yes, and that the language wasn't evolving fast enough. So the releases of Java 7, 8, and 9 were all 3 years apart, which is almost a lifetime when we're talking about software development time. Now, the powers that be, they've heard us loud and clear, and Java has gotten a much needed makeover. And now new versions of the language are being released every 6 months. And with so many features, it might be hard to keep up. So in this talk, I want to demonstrate some of the newer features of Java from, I guess, post Java 8. So 9 through 14, we're currently on Java 14. And I'll highlight these features and talk about how we can take advantage of them in writing our code. Now, the example that I'm going to use is some test code so that we all kind of understand, but everything that I'm going over can also be used in your production code as well, okay? So we're going to look at this banking page, and the specific test we'll go over today is just going to make sure that all of the accounts are listed here. So here's our test code. Let me walk you through it. So here we are logging into the application, and we get a handle to this accounts overview page. And this is where that table of accounts is located. Next, we get a list of the account numbers that are displayed on the page. And then we want to get the expected accounts. So this test data can change. So we're actually going to make a call to an API to get the expected accounts. And this returns a list of deserialized objects. So we want to make a new list, which will only contain the account numbers as strings as opposed to the entire account object. And we'll loop through the list of account objects and add the account number for each account into our list of expected accounts. Finally, we compare both lists to make sure that every account for this customer is actually shown on the site. Now, this test was written in Java 8. So what we're going to do today, don't say, oh, why are you using all of this old code? This is to show you like what it looks like in Java 8. And what we're going to do in this talk is go through it and see how we can modernize it using some of the latest features in Java. Now, before I continue, can everybody go on mute just so that everyone can hear? Can the moderators see who's not on mute? Help me out.
Yeah, Bharat S, you're not on mute. Can you please mute?
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and modernize this. So we're going to start here with the declaration of the accounts overview page. And as you can see here, we're following good Java conventions and we're using good names for both our class and our object. However, many times, as we see here, these two names actually end up being the same thing, right? So this is redundant and it makes for a lot of typing. So in version 10, Java introduced type inference for local variables. And what this means is that instead of explicitly declaring the object as the variable's type, we can instead use this keyword var. And Java will infer what the type is based on what's being assigned to it. So this is my favorite new feature in Java because as you all know, especially in test code, we always have these long class names in Java, especially for like our page object models. And now we no longer need to type all of that out. It's been a lifesaver, actually. It saved me a bunch of keystrokes. But before you get carried away and start using var everywhere, let me explain the rules and then also give you some tips. Okay, so this does not make Java a dynamically typed language like JavaScript or Python. That's a question that I get often, and honestly one that I was wondering when I first heard about this feature. The type is still there. It's just inferred from the right-hand side of the statement, which means you can only use var if you're actually initializing the variable. Otherwise, Java will not be able to infer what its type is, right? That makes sense. Also, it only works for local variables. So you can use this inside of methods, loops, decision structures, but you cannot use this for global variables, even if you're initializing them. Now, while local variable type inference can be used within the body of local constructs, it cannot be used in the headers of methods or constructors. And this is because whoever's calling you, they need to know the data type of the arguments that they need to send, right? Okay, so those are the rules. Now let's get into some guidelines. So given this variable name and this method name, I have no idea what the inferred type of X would be. Sure, Java knows, but me as the reader, I can't easily tell what this is, right? So this makes it really difficult to work with this variable in the code. Now, you should always use the variable names, but it's even more important if you're going to use var. Now, once you start using this, you're going to love it, but please don't overdo it. So using var here, this doesn't do us any favors, right? Int is 3 letters, var is 3 letters. You're not saving anything by doing this. So don't just slap var on every single variable. Sometimes when I have variables and it won't be clear of what the type would be from the method or whatever that is, I'll go ahead and write it out. Now I've updated our test method to use vars. So I'm using var here, and the inferred type is very clear to me as the reader because of the variable name that I chose. Here I had to change the variable name. So the one I had was actual accounts, which wasn't a bad variable name, right? But when I changed it to var, it wasn't clear what this represents. So I changed this to actual account IDs list so that it's clear that this is a list and it's holding the account IDs. For this one, I also changed the name from accounts to accounts list so that it's clear this is a list holding account objects. Here, I changed the name to be more representative, and I also explicitly defined the data type of the array list on the right-hand side. Now, if I didn't use this diamond operator to indicate that this is a list of strings, then it would be inferred as a list of objects, which is okay in this case, but it could get you in trouble down the road if you wanted to get one of the objects from this list and then do a dot, right? And you're expecting to get these string methods, but you only see the ones from object. Here, I'm using var inside of a for loop just to show you it can be done here as well. All right, let's see what else we can modernize. Let's go inside of this get accounts method. Now remember, this is the table, and we're getting all of those values from the first column that's labeled account. And here's the code to do this. Now we see here, it finds all of the account sales, and these are web elements objects. Then it creates a new list to hold just the text of the web elements. So this is a list of strings. And to populate that list, we loop through each of the elements from line 3, get their text, and then we add them to our new list from line 6. And notice this method needs 2 lists and a loop. There's a modern approach to do this in Java by using functional programming style. So this approach was actually added in Java 8, but I don't see it used much in test code, so I wanted to highlight it just briefly. So this is much more streamlined, right? Here we still call find elements to get the list of web elements, but we don't need to store them. Instead, we turn this into a stream from which we can do some cool functional programming. This map function, this will take those web elements and map them into whatever is passed into this. So here we're saying get the text from these web elements, then store them into a list, which we return. Here's an alternative way to write that map call. Notice in the top example, line 5 uses a shortcut, those 2 colons, or syntactic sugar. And then at the bottom, line 3 uses the fully spelled out approach with the arrow. Now we can do this same cleanup in our test method. So instead of using the to list and a for loop in the test method, I've changed this to now use stream and then map what I need into a single list. Now it's a good practice to break up these chained method calls where
It's 7 o'clock.
where each call is on a new line. So it's really tempting to do this big, powerful call all on one line because it's like, wow, look at this wicked one-liner, right? But it makes it harder to read your code and process what it's actually doing. And in some IDEs, I know in IntelliJ, if you put them all on one line, then you can add breakpoints at certain points, which is good. So it's a good practice to break it up so that each call is on a new line. All right, let's look at what's new with streams post Java 8. So Java 9 introduces a couple of new methods to stream, one being take while. Let's say that I have this code which gets the list of accounts and then uses the take while method on this stream of accounts. Within the take while method, you can pass in a condition, also known as a predicate. And what this is saying is to go through this list of accounts and accepts all the ones that have a type of checking until you get to one that does not have this type. So here, all of the accounts stored in accounts list. Notice there are 11 of them. And when we say take while type is checking, we end up with a list of 3 accounts. And as you can see, it's the first 3 accounts from accounts list. But when we got to the 4th account, the type was savings. So the stream ended. Java 9 also introduced drop while, which does the opposite of take while. For this one, we're saying drop the accounts of type checking until you get to one that is not. So with 11 accounts here, we see the first 3 are checking, the 4th is savings, 5 through 9 are checking, 10th one is savings, and the last one is checking. So how many accounts do you think will be collected here in checking accounts list? Take a guess. If you said 8, you're correct. So this method dropped the first 3 accounts because they matched the predicate, and then it stopped the stream. So all other accounts are collected and stored in a list. And all of those 8 accounts couldn't fit on the last slide, so here's the full list of drop while account type is checking. So you might be thinking, Angie, why on earth would I want to use take while and drop while? The examples that I showed you were a bit of a brain tease because the lists weren't sorted. So the results were indeterministic. However, if you sort the collection first, as we're doing here, it makes a lot more sense. And notice I'm using this comparator to specify which property I want this object sorted by. Hi, welcome. Can you go on mute?
I have mute control. I've been checking on people. I got this.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I got this one.
Okay. Great. So yeah, we use the comparator and we're saying sort by the account type. So given this sorted list, we see that it collects all of the checking accounts, and this actually makes more sense, right? Likewise for drop while. Okay, let's see what else we can modernize. How about we look inside of this get customer ID method? So this method is holding our test data. And based on the name on the account, it's returning the account ID. So this is using switch statements. And notice we have to declare the variable. Then we specify each case we want to handle. And inside of the case, we assign the value to that ID variable. And then we must follow the assignment with a break statement to prevent fall through into the next case, which would override the variable. Now, not only is this a lot of boilerplate code, but it's also risky. If you forget one of the break statements, then this will return the wrong ID. And I was actually using PHP this past weekend to do some side project work. And I laughed because I had a bug, and it was just this very bug. I forgot to put break statement on one of the cases, and the wrong value was being returned. So thank goodness for Java, because in Java 12, switch expressions were introduced. Now you can use switch to directly assign a value to a variable. Notice here, we're using switch on the right side of the statement to initialize this variable. The case statement doesn't need a colon in switch expressions, but instead it uses an arrow. And this is saying if the name is John, then assign 12212 to the variable ID. Notice I don't need a break statement. There's no fall through with switch expressions. Yay! And I can even simplify this a bit more by removing the assignment here and just returning the result of the switch expression. Okay?
Okay.
Now, using the lambda style arrows is one way to assign the value, but you can also use another approach. So you can use the colon that we're used to, but you need to follow that with the word yield. This is a bit more verbose, so I prefer to use the arrow when I have a choice. You can also specify more than one case. So notice here, we're saying if the customer name is John or Demo, which is his last name, then the ID is 12212. So this makes up for the removal of fall through from switch expressions because you can indicate all cases delimited by a comma, right? So fall through isn't always bad. Sometimes we have legit cases where we want to use fall through. And that was my question when this came in preview. What about, I want to use fall through sometimes, and fortunately they added this, so great. You can also do more than just assign values with the switch expressions. For example, here we're using the lambda style arrow followed by a set of curly braces to indicate that we want a block of code to be executed in this case. So inside of the body of this case, we can add more statements like this one, but the last line of the case must yield a value to be returned. All right, so let's talk about some rules. So you'll need to use the arrows or the colon yield. You can't use both. So line 3 would give you a compilation error because it's a different kind of case. You can use yield with the arrows, but only in events like the last one where you're using the curly braces to execute a block of code, multiple statements within the case. You can use any of the cases to throw an exception. So of course, in this case, no value is being returned for ID. The entire flow is interrupted by the exception. And I'm showing throwing this exception in the default case, but you can use it in any of the cases and even multiple cases. So let's say if I wanted to throw an exception for Mary and also throw one for default, and maybe there are even different exceptions, all of that is perfectly legal. Now, this is not a replacement for the switch statement. It's an addition to the language, meaning you can still use the switch statements. And in some cases, this might be the more favorable option. Now, as a rule of thumb, I use expressions when I am using switch to assign a value. And then I'll use statements when it's not for assignment, right? But it's to invoke some statements. Okay, so let's go back to our test. And we'll head on over to this get accounts method, which is an API call. So this method is making a get call to get all of the accounts for the specified customer. It's then deserializing the response into an array of account objects. And let's look at the API response for this call. Notice here we have an array of these account objects, and each account has an ID, customer ID, type, and balance. So I have this Pojo class that has nothing but these fields, as well as the getters and the setters for those fields. For any of you who have created Pojos, which are plain old Java objects, meaning they just have some fields and then some getter and setter methods. For those who've done this, you know how tedious this is, right? So many people have moved to using the Lombok external library so that they don't have to write all of this boilerplate code. But in Java 14, which is the current release, a new construct has been introduced called records. So this is a record. Much shorter, right? Notice here, instead of using the word class, we use the word record. Also, as opposed to opening this with a curly brace, we use parentheses, and then we declare all of the fields inside of those parentheses. And this is done using, comma delimited list. Then you close it with a closing paren and a set of curly braces. And that's it. You don't need to make any getters or setters. You don't need to override the inherited methods of equals or hash code or toString. It's just all done for you. And it's done really well. However, if you just want to override anything, you can do so within the curly braces of the record. You can also add additional methods and things in here as well. Okay? Now, records can be instantiated just like classes. So account is the name of our record, the one we just saw, and we use the new keyword and we call the constructor passing in the value. So just like you would instantiate any other one. The fields of the record are final, however. So there are no set methods generated for records. Of course, you can add a setter within the curly braces of the record, but I don't see a good reason to do that since the fields are final and they can't be modified anyway. You do have accessor methods. However, they do not start with the word get like we're used to. Instead, the accessor method name is the same as the field name. So notice here, the account.balance as opposed to account.getBalance. Now, records were released as a preview feature in the current release of Java 14, which was released in March. And what that means is it's not yet a permanent feature of the language. It's just available for us developers to play around with and offer feedback. And then based on that feedback, the implementation can change. So I say all of that to say, don't use this in your production code just yet because it could change. However, I do encourage you to play around with it. Any questions that you might have, I've gotten like a lot of great questions about records. Those can be addressed to the community so that, anything that might have been missed or anything that just doesn't seem like it's working well, all of that feedback can be given and we have an opportunity to get this just how we need it done. With it being a preview feature, that also means that support from external libraries might not be available just yet, right? For example, the Jackson library, that's used to just serialize that JSON response into this record. However, the Jackson library doesn't officially support records last time I checked. So as a hack, you'll need to explicitly bind each field to its respective JSON property. And when and if records becomes permanent, I'm sure the Jackson project will provide support so that the explicit binding isn't necessary. I've already seen an issue or two over there on the Jackson project, so they are aware of this and are working on it. Next, I want to show you text blocks. So let's continue with this API. What if instead of calling the API, we wanted to mock the data right there in the API util class? Well, to represent this whole thing as a string would be very tedious, right? So we need to escape all of the fields because they were already in quotation marks. We need to add these new line characters for each line break. And we need to add the plus signs for each line. So this is ugly, right? It's ugly to read. It's ugly to write. Text blocks allow you to use 3 quotation marks to open and close a big block of text. Notice you don't need to escape anything. The individual quotation marks are still there on the fields and the line breaks are respected. Text blocks were introduced in Java 13 as a preview feature, and we got a second preview in the latest release of Java 14. So this is also not a permanent feature just yet, but it is slated to become a permanent in the next release of Java, which is in September. So play with this one as well if you can. Get your biggest block of text, or the one that contains, a bunch of different characters, and make sure everything is good, and make sure you get the support you need in this feature. All right, so let's look at some rules and guidelines for text blocks. You cannot include the entire text block on the same line, or you'll get a compilation error. If it's all on the same line, you have to ask yourself, like, why am I even using a text block, right? You should just use quotes or something if you can fit it all on one line. A new line must be after the opening quotes, like in this second example here. Now, this is legal, but it looks a little goofy, right? So this is not the preferred way to do this. The preferred way is to have both the opening and the closing quotes aligned, right? And then have all the text in the middle between there. All right, one more thing I want to show you in that API class. Let's say that we didn't want the entire response, but we wanted to just return a hard-coded list of expected account IDs. The old way of doing this would be to use the arrays.asList method. However, in Java 9, this of method was introduced for all entities in the collection framework. So lists, maps, sets, etc. This one seems like a small feature, but I've actually been enjoying it a lot. And I think the reason for that is because it's more natural, right? Before, it took like this little bit of cognitive effort to recall, which class do I use to make a quick list? Is it array? Is it arrays, plural? Like which one is it? But now I want a list, I call list.of. I want a map, I call map.of. Nice and straightforward. And speaking of maps, populating these used to require separate method calls for each item that we want to add to the collection. Now you can define a map all with one line of code. So the parameters are key followed by value. And you see here we have 3 entries in this one line. Now, I wrote this like this just to kind of flex and show y'all like how dope this is. In real life, I would probably put them on separate lines just to make sure I don't goof up with my key value pairs. Okay, one more thing to note about using the of method is that it creates collections which are immutable. And what this means is that the collection cannot be changed by adding, removing, or sorting it later. So only use this when your collection won't require any changes later on in the execution. Okay? So there you have it. We've cleaned up this code from Java 8 and modernized it, and now it's all using Java 9 through 14, the latest features. These were a few of my favorite ones. I've been using them in different projects, and I find them quite useful even for test code. So what questions can I answer for you all? Are you going to help me go through the questions?
Yeah, we got a bunch in the chat here.
Oh.
For sure. Yeah, I think the trick might be figuring out at what point in the presentation you were when the question was asked. So let's see. First question was coming back up here. Yeah, I guess that's more of a comment. Sorry, moving on. Trying to get to a more clean question here. Oh yeah, Marco asks, how is this different from take while? How is take while different from filter? And that was asked at 7:02 p.m. about 20 minutes ago. If that helps.
Yeah. How is take while different from filter? Let me see. Trying to think of some differences. Maybe because filter goes through the entire list and grabs everything out, while the take while and the drop while, they go until they get to a certain condition. So as I showed in the example, when you didn't sort the list, everything that met that condition wasn't taken or wasn't dropped, whereas filter would take everything. So the take while and drop while will help with execution time, where if you have like this big, huge collection, you don't have to go through all of that to find it. You can sort it and just take what you need, or, take, if you only need a few of them or whatever, you do that. Or like if you wanted to see like some error cases or something, like, oh, this shouldn't be in the list, so drop everything or take everything or whatever. So there's a little bit more flexibility than with the filter.
Another question about take while. What if it operates on a parallel stream? This question comes from Sean at the same timestamp.
I haven't tried it with the parallel stream. Every time I do this talk, I get like the most fascinating questions of things that I haven't gotten to try yet. So I take notes.
I smell an FAQ blog coming.
You see what I mean? And then I do a FAQ, and then I learn, you learn, and everybody gets the benefit. So we are saying the take while on a parallel streams. Okay. Nice. If anybody knows, jump in. So I don't care about like somebody else taking the stage.
So this is Sean. Is it okay to speak, Angie?
Yes, it sure is.
Thank you. I'm the one that asked the question. I'm just realizing that I know you can make, if you're making your own stream, somehow you can actually specify like the splitterator. You can do things like non-parallel streams. So maybe your point about not actually applying to the whole thing is useful. But if it's not parallelized, then I'm imagining stopping early maybe that's just a desired feature of take while. As I'm thinking about it more, if it's parallel, I can't see how it's useful. But if it's not parallel, it'd be extremely useful, as you point out.
Yeah.
Just thinking aloud.
Okay. All right. I'm going to help you with some of these questions too, Peter. I'm looking too.
Next one was Tom Hill. We're at about 7:03 p.m. He was curious if there was a drop if, and it looks like, I think he meant to say keep is, or keep if, excuse me.
That's correct. Someone answered it. Apparently I should just use filter.
Okay.
I wanted something that wouldn't stop on the first one.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, exactly. Someone asked if, can we say Java 10 is no longer strongly typed? And no, it's still strongly typed. So if you were to like hover over that var in your IDE, you will see the inferred type. So the type is still there. You as the programmer, you just don't have to write all those characters.
And even though it's not a question, I thought a comment from November was kind of cool about VAVR or VAVR, or however you say that. I thought that was kind of interesting. Next one was, let's see, just scrolling forward a little bit here from Matt Henry. Do annotations still work on fields of records? Like does map struct support records?
Does what? Map?
Map struct. Sorry. He's curious if annotations still work on fields of records.
Yeah, the annotations still work. And as you saw, like I used the Jackson ones on there, and you can put any of the other annotations as well. They still work.
Yeah, November linked to I think it's a JSR or
Is
something.
that someone's name? That's such a cool name.
Yeah, I know. He or she linked to something from openjdkjava.net. I'm getting a 404. 1 second. Maybe there's just a syntax error there. Yeah, if you just drop the colon at the end of it, yeah, it looks like basically some sort of an RFC type of thing. Yeah, on records. So she's sort of citing the dictionary definition there, as it were.
Okay.
Or he, I don't know. Next question was from Pierre. I'm not going to say the name correctly because I don't do very well in French, but his question was why attributes are final in a record.
I don't know. I don't know why it was designed that way. I don't know. I'm sure it's in the spec somewhere. We can go and read up on it. But when I read it, I didn't see that it was final. I didn't know that until I started playing around with it. Maybe someone has given some more detail on why that decision was made, but I'm not sure. And actually, it's interesting because what a lot of people are usually asking is, well, can I use builders and stuff like this with records? And because those fields are final, then no. But someone did post on Twitter, like, I don't remember who this was. I'll try to find it and post in the meetup comments so that you all can be notified. But this guy just went wild with playing with records, and he started doing like all sorts of like crazy things, and he even got like builders to work. I didn't get to dig into how he did that, but he did, and I gotta go find it now because it was on my to-do list to figure out like why did he do that and how did he do it, and I forgot about it until just now. So yeah, I don't know, but it seems like there's ways around it.
Angie, I think I skipped over a follow-on question from Matt Henry before. He was the gentleman that asked about do annotations work on fields of records, and to which November responded with the JEP citation. I think the follow-on question was, does MapStruct support records?
Yeah, I don't know what's MapStruct.
If anyone has an opinion, we can. I'm checking it right now. Abstract Java. I'm presuming it's some sort of data.
So I think I can speak. I think the question is referred to the structure map.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, yes, it can. So I don't know if it was in that example, but some of the things that I had to deserialize, I actually did so in like maps. So yes, that is totally valid.
Great. Okay. A couple more comments. Yep. Oh, a question from Sia. Curious about how the editors and the IDEs are adapting. Who do you feel is keeping up with the changes the best? If I could venture my own personal opinion, I know NetBeans was always pretty close to the Java spec, as they have a bunch of Oracle employees working on it, but IDEA is just up to the minute. I don't know. Yeah. They're amazing. My 2 cents, but yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. IntelliJ from JetBrains, they are on top of it. Not only do they allow it, they also, develop features and stuff to kind of help you navigate it. So it's been, they've been pretty good. That's who I've been using.
I think it's amazing that despite the fact that you have Eclipse and NetBeans that have long since, quote unquote, open sourceified or commoditized the market, that IntelliJ still charges some money and they're doing fine. They're not on NASDAQ trading at, $500 a share or whatever, but, right. Hey, they're doing just fine. Thank you very much. And I think a lot of people love their tooling. I don't work for JetBrains, disclaimer. I'm just a fan.
Yeah, it's a good tool.
Cool. I don't have any experience with Eclipse, but from a direct experience with Eclipse from recently, but from what I've seen in the past, they've done a decent job in the core Eclipse IDE of keeping up with Java releases. I think they might be slower to sort of integrate the new features throughout the rest of like the language or the frameworks or things like that. Whereas my experience with IntelliJ is that they just do that often on day one, unless there's some huge job, in front of them. But anyway, long answer to a short question. I think the next one was from Jason Erickson. He was curious if mutations on immutable collections, compile time errors or runtime errors. are mutations on immutable collections compile time errors or runtime errors? There we go. Sorry. And
Yeah.
then also, are nulls rejected from immutable collections like in Guava?
As far as the compile time or runtime, it's compile time errors. I'm trying to think if all of them are compile time errors. I know, like trying to add or delete them, believe sort as well. For the most part, compile time. I don't know the answer to the Guava question, if the nulls are rejected or not. Does anyone know that? Okay. Should we take a question for the Q&A?
Yeah, totally. If someone
Or-
pops up midstream, feel free to just unmute and jump in. Let's see. Just continuing on here. Oh, interesting. Jim was commenting on the drop while and take while about parallel streams, just saying that they're somewhat computationally expensive, and threads have to kind of sync up with each other and figure out what to do, and that can cost you something. Just as a quick side note, Sean asks, why do you prefer Jackson over JSON? Just curious.
Me?
Yes.
I wouldn't
believe.
say
I don't think that was directed to somebody else. I think it was directed to you.
I wouldn't say I prefer it. It's just the one that I've used the most, I guess. You know how you start using something and then that's just the thing you use? That's what this is. So I wouldn't like fight you or anything on, like, oh, Jackson is better or anything like that. It's just what I use.
So the reason I asked about the Jackson is because I've actually found it hard to get an API. I was working with some JSON code. I just found that JSON was just easier to use, but I couldn't for the life of me find the latest release of Jackson. And so, I hear it's faster, but I couldn't find it. I think it's faster XML or something, but it was really hard to find modern documentation on it for some strange reason. Maybe that was my searching abilities. I don't know. But
maybe they rebranded it or something.
No.
Oh, they had a pretty
I've used
popular
JSON
brand.
too.
You use JSON too?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to check out JSON.
there's a
It's
small
pretty
bug in
easy to
JSON.
use.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they force lenient parsing. There's a way around it, and I can give you some code to get around it easily. But they force lenient parsing, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you kind of dig in and write your own parsing a little bit, like by calling their API. It's kind of annoying. That's my one gripe against
Celebrity
JSON.
XML parser deathmatch is your next session, I think, Angie. And you know what? I bet you with all the YAML hate going around that would actually crush.
I hate YAML too. Yeah, maybe I do live stream sometimes to play with different things. So I could do let's check out JSON live stream.
Totally.
Y'all would have to come and coach me though.
That'd be hilarious. Okay, let's see. A couple more comments. Something about object mapping. Coming back. Yeah, totally, Sean. JetBrains can definitely see the future. I'm with you on that. Spring Tool Suite is great. It's built on Eclipse, so it's just sort of transitive from Eclipse. Like Spring Tool Suite operates on the Spring Framework level tooling and just passes through whatever Eclipse is doing to pick up the core Java SC, core Java language. So Spring Tool Suite in itself, it's really more of a question of how quickly the Spring team adapts to language structures being introduced. And I was the Spring sort of, kind of dev marketing person for about 7 years. And in my experience, they did a pretty good job picking up stuff like that when they introduced Lambdas in Java 7, I think it was. They did a really good job integrating that quickly throughout the Spring framework. So, unless it's something like reflection, which Spring does some funky tricks with, I think generally they do really well picking up new language structures introduced in Java SE into the core framework. I'm not sure if that was your question, but feel free to jump in and clarify.
Nice.
If you'd like. Next question was Yep, VS Code, definitely. Yep, that is becoming more and more popular. Agreed.
Yeah, I've used that a couple of times for Java. I don't know. I still always go back to IntelliJ, but yeah, you're right. They're getting better and better too.
Yep.
Java.
Yeah, who knew Microsoft put out good dev tools, right? We never saw that coming. So let's see. Matt Henry dropped a link for us to the Mapstruct thing from earlier.
Oh, this is an open source thing. I've never heard of this.
Yeah, me neither. This is a new one. Add support for mapping for Java Rect 14 records. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody is scrambling now. Like, oh, Java 14 is coming.
Yep. Oh, Angie, I'm sorry, forgive my ignorance. Is Java 14 a long-term support version?
No.
Okay.
So 11 is, and which one will be after 11? 12, 13, 14, maybe 15?
I thought it was 17 for some reason.
17? Yeah, I don't know what the next one, but the current long-term support one is 11.
Okay. I know a lot of people are still like Java 8 is the new Java 6, but yeah, I think a lot of people are surfing from LTS to LTS release, but it's really great to get the interim stuff because I think sometimes it gets short shrift.
I know. Yeah.
So thanks for that. Let's see. A couple more comments.
I see the one about the string interpolation. No, that's not there. I haven't heard any word about it being there. Where do I use this? I use it in, I guess, JavaScript. Trying to think of any other languages I use it in. But no, not in Java.
Yep. Yeah, some discussion on that. I think we're running out of questions. And we still have 37 people on the line from the high watermark of 58. So, wow, super engaging, Angie. Thank you. And we haven't had a sort of more straight Java language session in quite some time. So really appreciate this.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt. I do
Not
have
at
a
all.
question.
Please jump in. Yeah.
I do have one more question, and it's, is there any maybe a documentation, or do you happen to know what's the time complexity on those new methods, for example, of the stream class, the map, the filter?
Someone just posted it. I think I retweeted it like yesterday. Someone posted a nice little graph. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Probably not, because I talk too much on Twitter. Let's see. Oh, look, I found it. Okay,
Nice.
Look at that. Oh, sorry, it was for JavaScript. It was for Java, but it's probably like similar, right? Oh, and they were only talking about for loops. Okay, so no, I don't have the time complexity stuff. I'm sure someone's written about this, right?
One other question, but yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off. If anyone else wants to comment, please feel free. There was one other question from Pierre again. Forgive me, Pierre, for not attempting to pronounce your hyphenated name because I won't do it right. And he was asking if you could re-explain the difference between yield and return. And I don't think we're talking about basic finance.
Yeah, so yield, that's in the switch expressions, right? It was actually something else before yield. Was it, who remembers? In the previews, it was it wasn't return, I don't think. It might have been break or something, but then that was too confusing to people because we use break for the statements or whatever. Or was it continue? It was something that we already used. It was basically going to be like this overloaded term. So you use yield when you can use it like colon yield and then some value, but that doesn't really make sense. You can do it, but it's more so like, okay, I want to execute this block of statements, but then I have to say at some point what to yield back to this variable because we need to assign something to this variable, right? So that's what it's used for.
Yes, this is Pierre. So do you mean when you use a yield, you can continue the statement after?
No, that has to be the final statement. So you do whatever, print some stuff, do some other execution, do this, do that. And then you're saying, okay, after I've done all of this, maybe it's a calculation of some sort, then this is the value I like to yield or I like to assign to the variable, right? Because that's the purpose of the switch expression is assignment. So while you can do some other things before that assignment, you need to then return a value back to that variable.
Okay, get it. It's in the switch, for example, and you continue the method, but you just finish the case and return the method for the value for the switch. Okay, get it. Thanks.
I wouldn't be surprised if yield was implemented under the covers in the statement as a return expression, like when it's compiled.
Probably. I'm trying to remember what word it was in the preview. I don't think it was return, but it was something that we already used and it was causing confusion.
Maybe it was let there be.
Nice one. Cool. I think we have hit the end of the question queue for the moment.
Okay. Do I like to use explicit else's? No. I don't. I do if such and such and such. And then after that, I do return, blah, blah. No else.
All right, folks. Well, listen, Angie, this has been great. Thank you so much. And please, would you mind terribly dropping a link to your course in the Zoom?
Oh, yeah. Let me do that. Sure thing. You send people my way. Send people because it's absolutely free and it's actually a really good course. So
yeah, no, I'd love to drop it into the Spring Users LinkedIn group. I mean, it's got like 50,000 members. So
really, yeah, put that there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, everyone's saying thank you, and yeah, we'd love to have you back to talk about testing whenever you are up for it. You know, with COVID, it becomes remarkably easy to arrange these things, right? You know, we don't even have to order food anymore, much less secure a venue. So, you know, when you if you feel like you want more or you want to come back and just have some fun with us, we'd love to have you back. And,
sure, especially when we open back up. I live right here in Oakland, so let's meet in person too, everyone.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, me too. That's awesome. Oh, nice. Yeah. Oakland rocks. East Bay Mountain.
Me three.
Yay.
Yeah. East Bay, baby. East Bay. Sorry. Okay. Sweet. All right. Well, it looks like there's the link. Hold on. I'm just checking that out. Nice. Test Automation University. Sweet. Yeah. A couple requests for integration testing. Always a popular topic, especially in today's world of microservices, where integration testing is a nightmare. Nightmare.
Nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Angie, appreciate it. I will send you the recording. And what we usually do is I'll once it's up on YouTube, I'll just use the meetup.com platform to blast it out to everyone that attended and post it on Twitter. So.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great night.
Stay safe and healthy. Take care.
All righty, bye.
Bye, everyone.